Well, while you have on the one side the attacks against China coming from the neocon geopolitical faction, they're continuously escalating. But I find it quite interesting that two so-called mainstream newspapers in the last several days were actually forced to sort of reassess the situation with China. And of all places, one of them was the New York Times, who wrote, "The American dream is alive in China," which I find quite ironical. And they discuss the fact that all the prognosis of Western experts predicting, either that China would, once admitted to the WTO, would eventually adopt the Western system of democracy and free trade, that these experts were wrong, but also those who said that China would not function, that it would collapse, were equally wrong, because China in the last decades has proven to be a completely different model. They had continuous growth rates, initially from, at the coastal regions, 12%, then it leveled down somewhere around 8%, and it's still now an average of 6.5, 6.8%, but without cyclical crises interrupting it. And, so it is very clearly, I mean, they have one headline which says, "The country which failed to fail," or "the failure of a country to fail." I mean, like as if it needed a double negative description to describe something positive. So I think this is very interesting. And they said China is already the leader in optimism. For example, if you take two 19-year-olds, one living in the United States and one living in China, and you would ask them or look at their perspective for their life, who would have a better chance to have a bright future? The answer would very clearly be the Chinese 19-year-old. Now, that is not written in stone. I mean, we are here with the Schiller Institute to try to change that, because obviously, it's not possible to have the new Silk Road spreading to, all of Asia, Latin America, Africa, and all of these continents develop, and then the United States and Europe collapse. I think that that is unfortunately, a wishful thinking if somebody would think that way. And our whole purpose is to try to change that. Now, it is interesting that also Le Monde, the French, one of the two leading French papers, had a similar article, basically acknowledging that the Chinese model is successful. And then they warn that the West absolutely must avoid of going into the Thucydides trap, which is the old question, will the dominant power up to that point try to suppress the rising power by military means, which in the age of nuclear weapons obviously would mean the extinction of civilization. And just to remind people that the war danger is not eliminated at all. I just was reading headlines that Russia is considering to change its nuclear doctrine in a clear response to, all these NATO maneuvers, the NATO moving to the Russian borders, and various bellicose statements coming from various people in the West, that they may change their nuclear doctrine to the idea that if they strategically are attacked, even with conventional weapons, that they would preserve the right to use nuclear weapons against such an attack. And I think that that shows you that we are not in safe waters at all. But as we have said many times, the real reason for the war danger is the systemic crisis of the Western financial system. So in order to overcome the war danger, we absolutely have to go in the direction of Glass-Steagall, the four laws, cooperation with Russia and China in a new paradigm. And I think we need to have a serious discussion, because this China bashing and Russia hysteria is really the kind of preparation for war, because you need an enemy image if you want to attack a country. So I really would urge people to look at the alternatives which clearly are existing and asking to be implemented.